My name is Zara Mensah. I am 33 years old, and I have been a senior financial analyst at an investment consulting group in Atlanta for 6 years. On a Tuesday morning 3 weeks ago, I was at my desk reviewing a client report when my phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification. It was a congratulatory post from our HR department. The headline read, "We're thrilled to announce the appointment of Kyle Bowen as head of analytics." Kyle Bowen is 26 years old and has been with the firm for 14 months. He is also the nephew of my direct manager, Mr. Bowen. I had been told 6 weeks earlier that I was the top internal candidate for the head of analytics role. I had been acting in the position unofficially for 3 months. My most recent performance review described me as the strongest pipeline candidate this department has produced in 5 years. I read the announcement twice. Then I opened my screenshot tool. Then I opened the evidence folder I had been quietly building for 4 weeks. Ever since my manager told me to be patient, and I understood, for the first time, exactly what that phrase was designed to do. I stayed quiet until the announcement went live. I had joined the firm 6 years ago as an analyst straight out of a finance postgraduate program. In my first year, I was rated in the top quartile of my intake group. In my second, I took on 2 client accounts flagged as underperforming and turned both around within 8 months. By my 4th year, I was running the analytics function informally, coordinating the team's output, reviewing junior work before it went to clients, and presenting quarterly results directly to department heads. Nobody had given me the title. I had just become the person the work came to. In my 5th year, Mr. Bowen joined as my manager. Brought in from outside, which was unusual, the firm generally promoted from within. He was pleasant in meetings, well-connected at the senior level, and had very little working knowledge of the actual analytical methods his team used. He relied on me to translate his broader directives into functional output. I didn't mind. I was patient. I had been building a track record for 5 years, and the head of analytics role, formally open since the previous holder retired, was the natural next step. Mr. Bowen had told me as much. Twice, in writing. The head of analytics position was posted internally in January. The job description listed 5 requirements: 7 or more years of financial analysis experience, demonstrated leadership of an analytics team, a master's degree in a quantitative field, proficiency in 3 specific modeling platforms, and a track record of executive-level client presentations. I met all 5. 7 years of experience, 6 at this firm, 1 prior. I had been leading the team informally for over a year. I had a master's in quantitative finance. I used all 3 modeling platforms daily, and I had presented directly to executives at 9 of our 15 active client accounts. I submitted my formal application on January 14th. 3 days later, Mr. Bowen called me into his office. "Zara, I want you to know your application is very strong," he said. "You're the top internal candidate." He said it with the warmth of someone delivering good news. I thanked him and went back to my desk. In February, I was asked to lead 3 additional client accounts that would normally fall to a head of analytics. I said yes. In March, I asked Mr. Bowen about the timeline. He smiled. "Be patient," he said. 2 words, delivered pleasantly, designed to close a conversation rather than answer a question. I wrote them down when I got back to my desk. Mr. Bowen had a nephew. I knew this because Kyle Bowen had joined the department 14 months ago as a junior analyst. He was 26, personable, and showed up in the kind of clothes that suggested he'd been told the environment was more casual than it was. He was not a poor analyst, he was adequate. He met deadlines, followed instructions, and was unfailingly polite in meetings. He also had 2 years of professional experience, a bachelor's degree in business administration, and had never led a team or presented directly to a client. For the first 6 months, I assumed his presence was simple family favor. Mr. Bowen had helped his nephew land a junior role, which was unimpressive but not unusual. Then I started noticing other things. Kyle was invited to meetings I wasn't. He was CC'd on client correspondence that normally came to me. He was introduced to a visiting partner as a rising talent. In 2 separate team presentations, he was listed as a contributing analyst on work I had built without his involvement. Small things, easy to dismiss individually. But January came, The job was posted, and I began paying closer attention. The small things stopped looking small. The meeting was on a Wednesday afternoon in late March. I had requested it. I told Mr. Bowen's assistant it was a check-in on the promotion timeline. She scheduled 30 minutes. I came prepared. I had a printed summary of my past 6 months, the 3 additional accounts I had taken on, the team output metrics during my informal leadership period, and the client satisfaction scores, which were the highest the department had recorded in 2 years. I placed it on the table. Mr. Bowen barely glanced at it. "Zara," he said, "you're doing great work. Everyone sees that." He folded his hands. "These decisions take time. There are factors above my level I'm not always at liberty to discuss." He gave me the smile he used when he wanted to seem reasonable. "I just need you to be patient." I looked at the printed summary on the table. "Is my application still being actively considered?" I asked. "Of course," he said. "Absolutely." I picked up the summary, folded it, and put it back in my bag. Then I went back to my desk. I opened a new folder on my personal drive. I called it documentation. I started filling it that same evening. I spent that evening at my kitchen table and every evening that week, doing something I had not done once in 6 years of working for this firm. I built a record. I went through every email, every calendar invite, every performance document I had been given or sent since January. I printed Mr. Bowen's email from the 17th, the one where he called me the top internal candidate. I saved the job posting PDF before it could be archived. I exported my performance reviews for the past 3 years and highlighted every line that spoke to my readiness for advancement. Then I started watching Kyle more deliberately. I noted the meetings he attended that I didn't, the email threads he was added to, the accounts where his name appeared as contributor on work I had built without him. I was not angry, not in a way that felt unmanageable. I was paying attention in a way I had never bothered to before, because for 6 years I had believed the work was enough, that doing the job exceptionally and without complaint would eventually be recognized the way it deserved to be. The be patient conversation had closed that chapter. I was done waiting to be noticed. I was going to make sure I couldn't be overlooked. 3 weeks into building my documentation, I pulled up the original job posting. I had saved it as a PDF on January 14th, the day I submitted my application. I compared it against Kyle Bowen's LinkedIn profile. The job required 7 or more years of financial analysis experience. Kyle had 2 years and 2 months. The job required demonstrated leadership of an analytics team. Kyle had never managed anyone. The job required a master's degree in a quantitative field. Kyle had a bachelor's in business administration. The job required proficiency in 3 specific modeling platforms, 2 of which Kyle had demonstrably never used, based on the work he submitted internally. The job required a track record of executive-level client presentations. Kyle had attended 2 client meetings as a junior observer. He met 0 of the 5 posted requirements. I had met all 5. I saved the LinkedIn screenshots alongside the job posting PDF and added both to my folder. Then I sat back and looked at what was in front of me. This was not a competitive process where I had been passed over by a stronger candidate. This was not a process at all. It was a decision that had already been made, dressed in the clothes of a process. I confirmed it on a Friday morning, and my chest tightened when I saw it. A colleague named Nia, who sat 2 desks from me and had been at the firm 8 years, stopped by just before noon. She had served on interview panels for the last 2 internal senior promotions. "Did you get your interview scheduled yet?" she asked. I looked at her carefully. "For head of analytics," she said. "They ran full 4-person panels for the last 2 senior roles. I haven't heard anything about a panel being assembled for this one." I opened the HR internal portal. Under the head of analytics posting, a status update had been made 2 days earlier. It read, "Selection in progress." Not interview scheduled. Not panel convened. Just selection in progress. I called HR and asked without inflection whether formal interview panels had been scheduled. The coordinator paused before answering. "The selection for that role is being handled directly by the department head," she said. The department head was Mr. Bowen. He had bypassed the firm's entire formal selection process. Completely. No panel. No structured review. No independent oversight of any kind. Just one man deciding alone for his nephew. I added the HR call to my folder. Timestamped. That evening I contacted an employment attorney. Her name was Ms. Farrow. I had found her through a referral from a former colleague who had used her in a workplace dispute 2 years earlier. She practiced employment and discrimination law with a focus on corporate cases. I sent her a summary email before our call. The timeline, the documentation, the qualifications comparison. She read it before we spoke. Our call lasted 40 minutes. She asked precise questions. She wanted to know whether the firm had a formal written promotion policy. It did, requiring structured panels for all senior appointments. She asked about Mr. Bowen's written statement naming me the top candidate. I had the email. She asked about the qualifications gap. I walked her through it. She was quiet for a moment. What you're describing, she said carefully, is a combination of nepotism, violation of the firm's own written promotion policy, and depending on the protected characteristics involved, a possible Title VII discrimination claim. She told me to keep building the file. And Zara, she said, wait for the decision to be formally committed. Don't act before it's irrevocable. I told her I understood. I understood precisely. I kept going to work. Every morning. Same desk. Same accounts. Same team meetings where I sat across from Kyle Bowen, who was increasingly being positioned at the center of conversations he had no technical basis to lead. I watched Mr. Bowen give Kyle the floor during a client update in the second week of April. Kyle stumbled through a section of analysis I had written. The client, a partner at a regional healthcare group, asked a follow-up question about the methodology. Kyle paused and said he'd follow up by email. I answered the question. The client thanked me. Mr. Bowen moved on without acknowledgement. At home that evening, I added the interaction to my log. Client name, date, time, the question Kyle couldn't answer, and the answer I gave. The file now held 43 entries across 9 weeks. Mr. Bowen's email naming me the top candidate. The job posting PDF. Kyle's LinkedIn screenshots. The HR call log. Nia's account of the missing panel. My last 3 performance reviews. 9 weeks of detailed logs. I was not building this from bitterness. I was building it the way I built every model, precisely without assumptions, with every data point in its right place. Miss Farrow had said to wait. I was waiting. Nia came back to my desk on a Thursday in early April. She sat down without asking, which told me this wasn't casual. I asked around, she said quietly, about the interview process. She looked at her hands briefly. Apparently the conversation about Kyle started in December, before the role was even posted. I looked at her. Someone in finance told me Mr. Bowen had been telling people at the senior level that he was grooming a strong internal candidate for the role. By the time the posting went up in January, the decision was already made. The posting was procedural. It was never a real process. She was quiet for a moment. I've been here 8 years, she said. I've seen 2 rounds of this. People positioned out of roles they earned, roles handed to connections. It's quiet. It's never documented. She met my eyes. You're the best analyst in this department. Everyone who does real work here knows that. She stood up. I'll write a formal statement if you need one, she said. I thanked her. After she left, I sat with what she had said about December. The role was posted in January. He had been building the narrative for at least a month before the posting existed. This had never been about selecting the best candidate. The hardest part was a conversation I'd had in February. My partner, Dammy, and I had been talking for months about moving. Our lease was ending in July. We'd been looking at a 2-bedroom closer to the city, a stretch on our current income, but manageable with the head of analytics salary. In February, after Mr. Bowen called me the top candidate, I told Dammy we should start looking seriously. We toured 3 apartments. We put together a budget. We told our families we were probably moving. My mother had called 3 times since then to ask how the promotion was going. The last time she said, "Baby, you deserve this. You've been carrying that department for years." I had told her it was looking good. I had believed it. Sitting at my kitchen table in late April, looking at the lease applications we'd printed but not submitted, I felt something I had been holding carefully at a distance for 9 weeks. Not just anger, grief almost. For the version of the next 6 months, I had already started living in my head. I let myself feel it for 20 minutes. Then I closed the lease folder and went back to work. 2 days before the announcement, something shifted. Kyle had stopped coming to the team's daily stand-up. He had been attending every morning for weeks, more attentively than usual, taking notes, asking questions he never asked before. Then, suddenly, he wasn't there. I mentioned it to Nia at lunch. He's been in onboarding sessions, she said. I put my fork down. Onboarding for what? She shook her head. I don't know officially, but someone from HR has been in a conference room with him for 2 days. That evening, I checked our internal directory. The head of analytics listing still showed as vacant. When I refreshed it the next morning, 1 day before the announcement, it had been removed from the vacancy list entirely. I called Ms. Farrow that afternoon. I think it's happening tomorrow, I said. Is your file complete? Yes, I said. Then the moment it's published anywhere, in any form, screenshot it and send it to me. We file within the hour. I went home that evening and sat with the full documentation folder open in front of me. 47 entries. Every email, every log, every screenshot. I had been patient. Tomorrow would be the last day for that. The LinkedIn notification came at 8:53 in the morning. I was at my desk reviewing a client model. Phone face up, volume low. The notification read, Firm name, HR posted. We're thrilled to announce. I opened it. The post had gone live 4 minutes earlier. A branded graphic. The firm's colors. Kyle Bowen's professional headshot. And below it, in the firm's standard announcement font, we are delighted to announce the appointment of Kyle Bowen as head of analytics, effective May 1st. Kyle brings a passion for data-driven insight and a collaborative spirit that will drive our analytics function forward. The system had tagged me as a member of the analytics team. I was the 4th person notified of the announcement that had replaced me. I took 3 screenshots. The post, the congratulatory comments accumulating below it, the exact timestamp. Then I opened my email. I attached the complete documentation folder, 47 items, organized and labeled. I wrote a 3-line cover note. I sent it simultaneously to the HR director, the head of legal, the firm's compliance reporting inbox, and Ms. Farrow. The timestamp on my send confirmation was 8:59, 6 minutes after the announcement went live. I did not respond to the congratulations thread. I did not go to Mr. Bowen's office. I did not speak to Kyle. I said nothing to anyone on the floor. I sat at my desk and went back to the client model I had been reviewing before my phone buzzed. I answered 2 emails. I updated a projection table. I sent a draft report to a client on the West Coast and copied Mr. Bowen the way I always did. At 9:45, Mr. Bowen appeared at my desk with the expression of a man delivering difficult news. Zara, I wanted to speak with you before you heard from anyone else. I already saw the announcement, I said. He looked briefly caught. Right. Of course. He shifted his weight. I know this is disappointing. You're a talented analyst and... It's fine, I said. He paused. Really, I said. I appreciate you coming to tell me. He stood there a beat too long. I hope you'll stay focused on your current accounts. Always, I said. He walked away. HR had received my documentation package 6 minutes before that conversation began. He had absolutely no idea. Ms. Farrow called at 10:17. I've reviewed the package. I'm filing the EEOC complaint this afternoon. But first, walk me through Kyle's qualifications against the 5 requirements, based purely on what's publicly verifiable. I already had the comparison document. I walked her through it. 2 years of experience against 7 required. A bachelor's degree against a master's required. 0 team leadership against demonstrated leadership required. No client executive presentations on record against a proven track record required. And the 3 modeling platforms, which his public profile and observable output both indicated he lacked. Ms. Farrow was quiet after I finished. This is a pattern of nepotism accompanied by procedural violation of the firm's own hiring policy, she said. and the qualifications disparity between you and the appointed candidate is significant for the discrimination angle. She paused. There's one more thing I want you to prepare for, she said. If the internal review pulls his original application documents and those qualifications don't match what's listed, this becomes a materially different conversation. She told me to expect a call from HR by end of day. She was right by 1 hour. HR called at 3:41. The director, Ms. Osei, had a voice I hadn't heard before from her. Careful, deliberate, not the warm but measured tone of routine HR interactions. Zara, we've received your documentation package. I want to assure you it's being taken seriously. We're initiating an internal review, effective immediately. I thanked her. As of 3 o'clock today, she said, the LinkedIn announcement has been taken down. I had already noticed. I had set a refresh alert on the post. It had come down at 2:58, 63 minutes after my package hit the compliance inbox. We'll be in contact within 48 hours, Ms. Osei said. If you experience any change in your working conditions or anything that feels retaliatory, please contact me directly. She gave me her personal extension. After I hung up, I sat with the arithmetic for a moment. The announcement had gone live at 8:49. It had been taken down at 2:58. It had been public for exactly 2 hours and 9 minutes. In that window, a formal internal complaint filed, an EEOC process initiated, a legal review triggered. All before lunch. The floor changed by the following morning. Mr. Bowen arrived at his usual time, but did not hold the morning stand-up. His assistant sent an email saying it was canceled due to scheduling. That had happened twice in 6 years. Kyle did not come in. By mid-morning, 2 people from legal were visible through the glass wall of the HR conference room. At 11, Mr. Bowen was called in. Nia was at my desk by noon. He's been in there over an hour, she said. I nodded. They pulled Kyle's application file, she said. His original documents. Someone in admin told me there are questions about the qualifications section. She paused, specifically about whether what was listed matches what's verifiable. I had known from my own comparison that Kyle's public credentials didn't meet the requirements. What Nia was now suggesting was that the application itself may have claimed qualifications beyond even what his public record showed. If that was true, this was no longer only about nepotism. This had become something significantly larger. Ms. Farrow called at 4:15 with a measured urgency I hadn't heard from her before. The internal review has flagged something. I want you to hear this from me. Go ahead, I said. Kyle Bowen's application listed 7 years of financial analysis experience. His verifiable employment history shows 2 years and 2 months. I know. I documented that. What you may not know, she said, is that the application also listed a master's degree in quantitative analytics from a specific institution. She paused. That institution has no record of his enrollment. I was silent. The credential was either fabricated or inserted after submission, she said. Either Kyle submitted false qualifications, or someone altered his application. Given that the entire selection process was controlled solely by Mr. Bowen, with no independent HR oversight, the question of who had access to those documents and when is now central to the investigation. I sat with that for a long moment. Mr. Bowen had not just bypassed the process. He had apparently constructed false materials inside it, then posted the result on LinkedIn. He had given his nephew a role the nephew didn't qualify for, using credentials the nephew may not have known were fabricated, in a process he had controlled entirely himself. Mr. Bowen was placed on administrative leave 8 days after the announcement. I found out the way the floor found out. His assistant sent an email at 8:50 saying his meetings were canceled and project questions should route to HR until further notice. I had learned to read those emails fluently. Nia was at my desk by 9. Both of them, she said. She didn't need to specify. Kyle was asked to leave the building yesterday afternoon. Someone from legal walked him out. I thought about Kyle. 26 years old. He may have known everything. He may have known nothing about what his uncle had submitted on his behalf. I genuinely couldn't be certain which was harder to sit with. How are you? Nia asked. I thought about the lease applications at home, the apartments we had toured, the calls with my mother. I've been better, I said, but I've also been a lot worse. She put her hand briefly on my shoulder. Then she went back to her desk. And I went back to my screen and kept doing the work I had always done, because the work didn't stop and it never had. And that consistency was the one thing in 6 years that had never once been taken from me. The investigation ran for 3 weeks. Ms. Osei called every 4 days with brief, factual updates. The EEOC filing moved on its own track. Ms. Farrow handled that side. I gave one additional statement to the external investigator the firm brought in. Same format as before. Precise. Documented. The investigator asked me one question I kept returning to afterward. At what point did you decide to act? I said, the moment the announcement went live. Because once it was public, it was irrevocable. He couldn't reframe the decision as still in progress. The announcement was the receipt. And the receipt was what made the complaint unignorable. She wrote that down. She asked if there was anything I wanted the firm to understand about the impact of what had happened. I said, 6 years of work should not be made invisible by one person's relationship to one other person. The record exists. It has always existed. All I did was make sure it stayed visible when someone tried to look the other way. She nodded slowly. The investigation concluded 9 days later. I had not raised my voice once in those 3 weeks. I hadn't needed to. The findings came in 2 stages. The internal investigation concluded first. Mr. Bowen had violated the firm's written promotion policy by bypassing the formal panel process. The decision had been made prior to the official posting of the role, confirming exactly what Nia had told me in April. The qualifications listed on Kyle's application did not match his verifiable record, and Mr. Bowen, as the sole handler of a process he had controlled without oversight, bore direct responsibility for the discrepancy. Mr. Bowen was terminated, effective immediately. A firm-wide notice went out, carefully worded, the way these things always are. It was posted on the same company intranet where the original announcement had run. The retraction occupied the exact same digital space as the announcement it reversed. I read it at my desk and thought about the specific, quiet satisfaction of symmetry. Not the dramatic kind. The kind that arrives when something ends in the exact place it started, and the record, finally, is clean. The EEOC process moved more slowly. But 4 weeks after the internal findings, the firm's legal team contacted Ms. Farrow with a settlement proposal. The figure reflected, in Ms. Farrow's words, the strength and completeness of your documentation. We negotiated for a week. The final agreement included 3 elements beyond the financial settlement. First, a formal written acknowledgement that the head of analytics selection process had not met the firm's own published standards and that my application had been the strongest on record. Second, a mandated revision of the firm's promotion policy, requiring independent panel review for all senior appointments, not at manager discretion, but as a fixed structural requirement with no exceptions. Third, a provision that my full performance record be formally entered into the firm's permanent personnel file, separate from any records associated with the Bowen appointment. The third element was my idea. Ms. Farrow called it unusually specific. I told her it was the part that mattered most. The work had always existed. I just wanted to make sure the next decision maker would find it before making another promise they didn't intend to keep. 6 weeks after the investigation closed, the firm reposted the head of analytics role. Full formal process. Panel announced. Timeline published. Applications open internally and externally. A 4-person interview committee. 2 members from outside the department. I applied. I was interviewed twice. Once by the panel, once by the new department lead. 4 hours across 2 sessions. Technical questions about methodology, team management, and how I would transition the analytics function from its current state. I knew every answer. I had been living them for 3 years without the title. The offer came on a Wednesday afternoon. I called Dammy from the parking lot. It's done, I said. He went quiet for a moment. Which apartments are still available, he said. I laughed. The real kind. The kind that comes from somewhere you didn't know was ready to feel good again. We signed the lease 2 weeks later. My mother called that evening. How does it feel? She asked. I thought about January, about be patient, about 47 items in a folder and a screenshot taken at 8:53 in the morning. It feels exactly like what it is, I said. I think about the word patient, how it sounds like a virtue, how it's often used as one, said warmly, with a smile, in a tone that implies the person being told to wait simply hasn't earned the thing they're waiting for yet. I was patient for 6 years. I built a record that should have been irrefutable. I took on the work without the title. I sat in the meetings, answered the questions, delivered the results, and told myself the documentation would speak for itself when the time came. And then the time came, and a man handed the role to his nephew and told me to be patient a little longer. So I was patient through 47 entries in a documentation folder, patient through the call with my attorney, patient through the morning the LinkedIn notification buzzed, and I had to stay completely still and take screenshots instead of reacting. I stayed quiet, right up until the announcement went live, because that was the moment it became a receipt. A time-stamped, publicly posted, irrevocable receipt for a decision he could no longer call still in progress. I had been waiting for exactly that moment, and I had been ready for it since the first time he told me to be patient. Some people use be patient to mean keep waiting. Some use it to mean keep building. If you had been in that room, which one would it have meant to you?